Good afternoon, you guys. Thank you so much for joining us today for part 2 of Clerk Services in the age of COVID-19. We are going to give people just a few more minutes to hop into the presentation before we get started. So let's give it about 2 more minutes. For those of you that are just now joining us, we are just providing a little bit more time for some of our attendees to join. We do have nearly 200 people registered for this, so we just want to give people a little bit more time to trickle in. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon for part 2 of our Clerk Services in the Age of COVID-19 series. My name is Tiara Earls-Haas, and I am the Communication Specialist here at the Clerk's office, as well as the Chair of the Community Outreach Committee. And we're very excited to have you all with us today. Again, we do have lots of participation and we had a lot of registration for this, so we know that there's a lot of interest about the topics that we are going to be presenting around today. So with that said, I wanted to share a little bit around what brought this series to be, or where this kind of comes from. This webinar series is the efforts of our employee-led community outreach work group. And one of the things that we wanted to do was we wanted to find a way to educate the public around some of the services that we provide, as well as share how you guys can go about taking advantage of these services. With this particular series, we really wanted to focus in on how the public could take advantage of our services remotely, especially as we continue to social distance and follow CDC guidelines. So with that, it sort of birthed this Clerk Services in the Age of COVID-19 series. And today we are going to be sharing specifics around a couple remote services. But before we get started, I just want to share that we are going to be doing a Q&A at the end of the presentation. So as you're listening to the presenters, please do send in your questions using the Q&A feature. It's a Q&A chat function that you can use to send in your questions. And then at the end of the presentation, we will address those questions for the entire audience. So with that said, I would like to introduce our panelists today. So speaking to you guys today is our subject matter experts who will be covering several different topics. First and foremost, we have Jessica Fotinos, who is our legal counsel, who is going to be providing a very brief message to you guys today. We also have Leslie Wilkins, who will be speaking to you guys about online exhibits, particularly as it relates to the procedures and the requirements for that. We also have Ryan McDonald and Anthony Mata, who will be speaking to you guys around online exhibits, but specifically as it relates to the technology and the features behind that, as well as Chris Driscoll, who is going to be speaking to you guys today about e-filing. I would also like to introduce our moderators who are kind of handling the presentation behind the scenes. So we have myself, as well as Lori Fiskus and Andrea Williams, who will be handling the Q&A later today. So with that said, I would like to hand this presentation over to Jessica Fotinos, who has a message for you guys today.
Good afternoon, everyone. I need to get myself set up here. I have quite a few monitors going at one time, so bear with me. But as Tiara noted, my name is Jessica Fotinos, and I am the General Counsel and Public Information Officer for the Clerk's Office. And before we get to the substance of today's webinar and the exciting topics, sorry, excuse my hand, and knowledgeable speakers we have here to speak about some of our newest innovations. I wanted to speak briefly on two topics. One is COVID-19 and its impact on the Clerk's Office. And then the second topic is the Clerk's Office prohibition on providing legal advice. So first off, as you all know, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a tremendous impact on all of our lives, from where you're able to go to dinner, where your children are being educated, or are they able to go to school, where we can travel. And with that, the courts and the Clerk's Office have also been significantly impacted by COVID-19. So while the Clerk's Office is independent from the court and is overseen by an elected official, Jeff Fine, who is the elected clerk for the Superior Court in Maricopa County, the Clerk's Office does fall under the umbrella of the judicial branch of government and is subject to oversight by the Arizona Supreme Court. So throughout this pandemic, one of the main goals of the Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court, Robert Brutinel, as well as the presiding judge of the Maricopa County Superior Court, Joseph Welty, is to reduce individuals having to come to court facilities in person to receive not only court services, but Clerk's Office services. So along with Justice Brutinel and presiding Judge Welty, Jeff Fine, the elected clerk of court, shared that same concern and wanted to ensure that individuals and members of the public could receive Clerk's Office services in a remote fashion to the best of our capabilities. Restrictions have been put in place by the judicial branch to limit in-person court proceedings and to assure the safety of litigants, court staff, attorneys, etc. Many of these restrictions have been set forth in what are called administrative orders that have been issued both by Chief Justice Brutinel and Judge Joe Welty. The Clerk's Office serves the public in so many areas as to accessing the court, and most access to the court is primarily through the Clerk's Office. The Clerk's Office had to quickly pivot and look at ways in which the Clerk's Office could provide these services as much as possible remotely to the public. The Clerk's Office has a great partnership with the Arizona Supreme Court as well as the Maricopa County Superior Court. And we have worked collaboratively on many of these new technological developments that you will hear about today. Of course, we cannot predict how long this pandemic will continue. However, the clerk's office is working diligently to make as many services available remotely as possible. We have worked quickly and expeditiously to roll out these new developments that you will hear about today. On to my second message, and it will be brief. The clerk's office is prohibited under Arizona law from providing legal advice. We can provide information about our services and procedures, but cannot provide guidance as to legal strategy or what legal implications or ramifications may exist with regard to individual circumstances or cases. As a result, nothing in this webinar constitutes legal advice. The clerk's office receives phone calls and inquiries on a daily basis with regard to individuals seeking legal advice or guidance. And again, we are unable to provide them with such advice or guidance. However, we do intend, as Tiara had mentioned, to have a question and answer session at the conclusion of this webinar. However, during that session, we will not be able to answer any case-specific questions or provide legal advice or guidance. However, what we can do and what we do on a daily basis is provide information about the services we provide and how to access these services. I did want to note that the Superior Court does have a Law Resource Library Center, which is otherwise known as the LLRC. And that is a great resource for folks who are interested in obtaining additional legal information and things that are of more of a legal nature that would almost constitute legal advice. The LLRC currently is closed to the public due to the pandemic, but they too have been offering remote resources and do have people on staff to answer phone calls and for people to obtain forms and all different documents. And so I encourage you to visit the Superior Court's website to find out more about the Law Resource Library Center. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Tiara and our other panelists to cover the exciting clerk's office topics that we have on the agenda for today. I intend to stay on the webinar and hopefully be available during the Q&A session if any questions should come up that need my input or guidance. But I can tell you the speakers that the clerk's office has lined up for today are quite frankly the best subject matter experts in the topics that are on the agenda for discussion today. And I'm sure you will find the information that they are going to provide extremely valuable. And I hope everyone enjoys this webinar. So Tiara, back over to you.
Thank you very much, Jessica. So we are headed into the meat of the presentation. And next up, we have our first panelist, Leslie Wilkins, who is our Courtroom Services Manager, who is going to be providing some additional details about online exhibits.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leslie Wilkins, and I am a Courtroom Services Manager for the downtown facility. I'm happy to have the opportunity to share information about online exhibits. I will review the procedures and some of the submission requirements. The actual use of the online portal will be demonstrated by our next presenters. So why was the online electronic submission portal created? Prior to the COVID pandemic, the physical or paper exhibits were always delivered to the Judicial Division where the cases would be heard at the various courthouses. The topic of electronic exhibits has been discussed in the past as a future possibility. However, at the end of March 2020, we were forced to develop an electronic exhibit process when an administrative order restricted public access to the court due to the pandemic. We had to quickly develop a method for parties to submit exhibits for the essential and emergency hearings that were still being conducted at that time. The method we landed on was to create an email address for each court facility, and parties began sending electronic exhibits to those inboxes in early April 2020. One problem that some of you experienced and that we experienced with the email process was the file size limitations. This sometimes required parties to send multiple emails for a high volume of exhibits, or even to split up large individual exhibits into different emails. These challenges led to the development of the online exhibit submission portal, which has now replaced the email process for the adult facilities. Juvenile will continue to use the email addresses for Southeast Juvenile and Durango in addition to the portal for now. We are excited to offer a streamlined, simplified process for you, our customers. How does e-submission compare to in-person submission? First, in-person. If representing yourself, in-person exhibit delivery may require that you take time off work to transport the physical exhibits to the courthouse. You have to find parking, which is a greater challenge downtown, go through security, then wait in line at the file counter, or navigate through the courthouse to find the judicial division for your case. If you are an attorney, you have to either deliver yourself with the same requirements just mentioned, or you and your client must pay a runner service to deliver the physical exhibits. So with electronic, there is no need to take time off work. You can upload exhibits 24 hours a day, can be done from the comfort of your home, in some instances directly from your cell phone. If you need additional technology, you can have a family member help or go around the corner to the local FedEx or UPS store to complete the submission process. And for attorneys, this saves time and cost to eliminate the need of a runner service, which in turn should reduce the cost for your clients. And a quick note, for those that have used the email process in the past, we've made a couple of helpful changes. In adult cases, the exhibit submission form completed on the web page, which you will see in the next presentation, that replaces the cover sheet. So there's no need to send a cover sheet going forward. However, if you are submitting juvenile case exhibits, a cover sheet is still required. Additionally, the new portal requires exhibits to be uploaded individually, so the divider sheets used in the email process are no longer required. So what cannot be submitted through the exhibit portal? We cannot accept audio and video files through the electronic process. This is because the Court of Appeals has limitations on what they can accept electronically from our office, which includes these type of files. If an audio or video file is uploaded, you will get an immediate rejection bounce back message to inform you. Audio and video files can be submitted on a CD, DVD, or flash drive and delivered directly to the Judicial Division or to the Clerk's office filing counters. We cannot accept documents through the portal that need to be filed into your court case. Those must be submitted through e-filing or delivered to the filing counter. This also includes division copies of filed documents, such as conformed copies of pretrial statements. Those need to be provided directly to the judicial divisions. And finally, exhibits for criminal and civil jury trials should be submitted as physical exhibits for now. They should be delivered to the exhibit drop location at the file counters or the judicial division for that case. It is also important that you follow the orders of the judge in the hearing setting minute entry, including the submission deadlines. How do I know my exhibits were received? The documents uploaded in the exhibit portal are received immediately. You will get a confirmation email indicating your exhibits were received. We recognize this is a new process and there is some uncertainty, but if you receive an email confirmation, we kindly ask that parties not send the same sets of exhibits multiple times to make sure that we receive them. These duplications of document submissions may result in a delay in processing your exhibits. So if we have any questions on our end, or if there is a problem with your exhibits, we will reach out through email. How can I ensure my exhibits will be ready for my hearing? It is very important that parties comply with the exhibit submission orders of the judge in the hearing setting minute entries. This will ensure the exhibits are prepared and available for your hearing. Our staff works 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, and that's the time frame when electronic exhibits are processed. If we receive exhibits the day of a hearing or overnight for an early hearing the next morning, we will always do our best to process those late submissions, but there is a possibility that exhibits may not be processed in time for your hearing if submitted late. Additionally, some judicial officers won't allow exhibits to be used if they are not submitted timely. And a quick note about exhibit lists. If the parties are appearing virtually, the courtroom clerk will send a copy of the exhibit list by email the morning of your hearing. If the parties will be in person, the courtroom clerk will provide a printed worksheet at the time of the hearing, which is when parties received these exhibit lists prior to COVID. How do I get answers to questions about online exhibit submission? First, we encourage you to read the detailed instructions linked on the web page. The instructions identify each step to successfully upload your exhibits. However, if you have additional questions, Cleo, our artificial intelligence source, can answer some of those questions. She is located on the bottom right of the exhibit submission web page. The final method to inquire is to send your question to the COC exhibit questions link on the web page. We have personnel monitoring this inbox throughout business days to help answer your questions. And we want to do a quick demonstration of our artificial intelligence, and her name is Cleo. So Cleo is located on the bottom right side of the clerk's office webpage where it says chat. Cleo then, if you click on that, Cleo then pops up in the message box, and this is where you can ask questions, not just about exhibits, but about other topics also. We are excited about what has been accomplished with this new exhibit submission process in such a short amount of time. Our ultimate goal is to ensure you, as our customer, will experience a more effective, simplified process as you prepare and submit your exhibits going forward.
Thank you very much, Leslie. So with that, we are going to transition to our next set of presenters today. We have Anthony Mata and Ryan McDonald, who are going to provide some additional specifics around online exhibits as it relates to the technology and features.
Thank you, Tiara. Good afternoon. My name is Ryan McDonald. I'm the EDM program manager for the clerk's office. Basically meaning I'm responsible for the document management system and all the integrations with it, and new exciting projects similar to this exhibits application that we've created. I've been with the clerk's office since April of this year, but I've been with Maricopa County since 2006, and my primary focus has been on document management and workflow and process automation, things like that. So after I joined the clerk's office, it was nice to kind of get this response to some COVID issues put in our direction, and we were able to kind of brainstorm with the CRS team and Leslie and her team to come up with a neat solution, which Anthony's about to show you here. So I'll hand the reins over to Anthony now, and he can kind of talk through and show you the technology and the features behind the solution. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. My name is Anthony Mata. Been with the county for 20 years, I believe. The last 10 of those has been in electronic document management, converting paper processes to digital processes in the digital space, so on and so forth. I'm pretty new to the clerk's office, but again, I've been with the county since 1998, so I've been working a long time with electronic documents and solutions. If we can go to the first slide, please. Thank you, Lori. All right, what is the electronic submission portal? From the public perspective, the primary interface with the portal is through an electronic form, as we have here in the screenshot. The form is used to collect data required for courtroom services staff to process the exhibits, as well as the attachments that will ultimately become the marked exhibits, kind of like what the cover sheet does in the email process that Leslie described in the previous presentation. The form uses data validation and required fields to ensure that a complete form is submitted when you submit your exhibits. We obviously, with the free form text, we can't guarantee that every field is 100% accurate. However, we can guarantee that a complete form is submitted to courtroom staff, which should ultimately reduce the error rate when compared to the previous email process. Next slide, please. Thank you. Can the general public submit exhibits this way? Definitely. The primary goal of this portal, this solution, is to allow the litigants to submit their exhibits electronically. Anyone with access to the internet can access the portal. Obviously, certain case information will be required, like your case number, facility, judicial officer, etc. Next slide, please. Thank you. How does one go about submitting exhibits electronically? Well, I believe Tiara also put the link in the chat. The portal can be accessed by using this link. It's on the clerk's website. You basically will click on the link and open the form, complete all the required fields, and submit the form. You will not be able to submit an incomplete form. So if you're missing anything that's required on the form will let you know. We're going to do a demo in just a minute, but that link should be in the chat as well. All right, thanks, Lori. If you notice, you're going to have the required fields. Basically, anything with the red asterisk is a required field on the form. So if you click submit without filling out the required fields, the form's going to kind of let you know, hey, you can't submit this, and it'll give you a kind of a warning. Lori, if you can select the first judicial officer in the list. Yeah, that one. That's good. You'll notice the form collapses and basically stops the process. This would indicate that the judicial officer you selected from the list doesn't accept electronic exhibits. So in order to avoid submitting exhibits electronically to a judicial officer that doesn't accept them, we basically collapse the form and don't allow you to submit any further. Go ahead and change that to the second one, I believe. Edelman, yep. And you can see the form opens back up because this judicial officer does accept electronic exhibits. The next field is the facility. Go ahead and choose Durango Juvenile, please. Thank you. And then you notice the case types will cascade to only juvenile case types. So the cascading drop downs, that's a good benefit to the data integrity. We don't want you to submit case types for a facility that doesn't see them. So Laura, if you can change the Durango Juvenile to Central or any of the other, Central is good. And then you'll notice the case types change to obviously civil, criminal. So it will cascade depending on the facility that you select. You can pick any one of those, it doesn't matter. If you choose criminal, go ahead, this is a good feature. If you click yes on jury trial, the form will again shut down because obviously we're not taking electronic exhibits for jury trials. So if you change that to no, the form will come back and let you continue the process. The gray fields on the top right, the form submission date and form submission time, are read-only. Those fields are populated when you click the submit button at the bottom. We can't change that. That's basically just a timestamp for everybody's audit purposes. The field below that, hearing date, that has if you click on that hearing date field, there'll be a date chooser, and basically that would guarantee that the format's in the correct year, day, month, year, month, year, day, sorry. Go ahead and click on any date, doesn't matter. So that just basically guarantees that the date is in a good format that we understand, that the courtroom services staff can interpret. Case number, obviously you would have to have that information. Submitter first name, last name, so on and so forth. Sometimes the parties, are submitting on behalf, or someone's submitting on behalf of the parties, so that information could be the same or it could be different. The one thing that we do validate and we require you to enter twice is your email address, just to make sure that we have a good, valid email address for you, because we definitely would need to, number one, contact you if there was any issues with your form submittals, or for your confirmation. So as long as your email address is correct, you should get a confirmation email once you submit the form. Go ahead and choose any party role. So you have values based on your case type. Your party role will change as well. So that's how the cascading goes. This probably is one of the most important fields on the form, is how many exhibits are you submitting? For 10 or less, and you can enter any number, and then hit tab. There you go. And you can see that 9 exhibit attachment widgets, basically is what you can call them, open up. So if you change that to 5 maybe, or any number less than 9, and hit tab, you'll see this is a good, the form is basically telling you that you have to submit at least 1 attachment because you said you were going to submit 5. So if you click on the attach exhibit, it'll just, you don't have to do it, Lori. It'll open up a load dialog where you can browse to a file on your machine and attach however many exhibits you need to attach. Obviously, this individual attachment option up to 10 is good if you only have a few exhibits to submit, but what if you have 100 or even hundreds or dozens of exhibits? Go ahead and hit tab. And now we take away those attachment fields, because obviously you're not going to sit there and attach 100 individual documents. That just, you know, in the interest of saving time, we offer a bulk upload option for 11 or more exhibits. You can use this. It's a secure file folder. So you can, when you submit 11 or more, you'll be asked, do you want to submit a list of exhibits? And again, it's optional. You do have to answer the question. You can go ahead and click no. If you do click yes, then it'll open up another attachment widget that will let you attach your exhibit list right to the form. And then when you click submit, you basically will get an email to that email address that you entered with a link to a secure folder that will allow for bulk exhibit uploads. This will obviously save you time. You have the dozens or hundreds of exhibits for your case. Once you do get the link to the secure folder, it would basically allow you to drag and drop files. You can select individual files, or you can grab them using Windows or your standard desktop features where you can just pull them over to the folder. We're not going to demo that today because it would take too long to get the email, probably 5 minutes or so. But for the most part, once you submit, you'll get your email, upload the folder, and your process will be complete. You'd only be contacted if there was any issues with your process, or with your form submittal, excuse me. Next slide. Thank you. So what are the pros and cons of submitting electronically? This definitely is a streamlined process from the original email process. We made some improvements on the back end processing side for courtroom services staff that we're not obviously demoing in this public demo. We used existing technology and software licenses, so the cost for this was basically only the development time, and it also allowed for a very rapid deployment of the solution. I think we were just a little over 30 days in the entire implementation process, so that was a very quick deployment of the form and the portal and all the process that goes behind that. The form and the folder are secure, so they're encrypted. So you can upload your data, and it's a little bit more secure than the email coming across the wire. It'll allow you to obviously submit your exhibits faster than if you had to break them apart. For an email, maybe you had a 30 meg file and you had to split it half and half, or maybe into 3 different 10 megabyte files. So this will allow you to submit large files. Obviously, through the folder would be the better method, but if you only have 1 or 2 very large files, you should be able to get those through on the form as attachments. You'll get immediate feedback for rejected documents. So let's say you submitted an audio file or a video file, which they don't accept. You'll get an email saying that this file was rejected. If you submit multiple files, maybe you have PDFs and audio files, you'll only get the reject information for the invalid files like the video and audios. There's no need to submit exhibits in person, which is a huge benefit during obviously the pandemic. You don't have to take time off of work, and you don't have to make your way downtown and all the other things that Leslie described in her presentation. Another good benefit is in our document management system, now that we are capturing these attachments, the exhibits and forms, there's an audit trail. As I mentioned before, you have the form submission times that are logged. You get a lot of document history, a lot of metadata on the document that's really valuable when you're trying to track down information. Whereas before you would just be searching a mailbox, and it would just be almost impossible to track down an individual file or an individual exhibit in a group of exhibits that were submitted. All of this, moving it into the digital, the document management system in digital space, it gives a lot of increased visibility into the business process for the courtroom services staff. We developed some reports for them. They can now get metrics on their document counts by facility, document counts by judicial officer, by case type, so on and so forth. What are the cons of this? Obviously, internet access will be required for those that want to submit electronically. That could be a challenge for some. Depending on, this entire process is really dependent on the technology infrastructure of the clerk website. So if the clerk website went down, obviously the portal would not be available either. And really, it requires litigants to convert hard copy documents to electronic, whether you scan them, photograph them, so on and so forth. You do have to go through the effort of converting paper to digital. So those would be some of the cons overall. I think that's going to do it for me.
Thank you very much, Anthony. So next, we are going to transition over to our next panelist this afternoon. We have Chris Driscoll, our Innovation Delivery Manager, who is going to be speaking to you guys about e-filing.
Thanks, DR. Yeah, my name is Chris Driscoll, Innovation Delivery Manager with the Clerk Superior Court. I've been with the Clerk's office for about 15 years, and a good portion of that time was spent supervising and managing our e-file department, which is why I get to talk to you about this today. Things that we're going to go over today, two main things. First is, what is e-filing? In general, what is it? How does it work? We'll talk about some of the different systems involved, because that does get a little complicated. We'll talk about mandatory versus permissive and what those terms mean when we use them, exceptions to those mandatory and permissive rules, and then how payments are handled, because that does vary by case type and system depending on what you're using. And then at the end, we'll go over future expansion, what we're looking at as far as other areas that we will be offering e-file in the near future. So first, just really quick, just to review the paper process as it currently stands right now. So your customer would need to come into one of our courthouses to the filing counter with your documents to file them with the clerk. And the clerk has several things that they have to do. They need to review the filings to make sure they're formatted correctly. Sometimes they have to make copies. They have to scan all the documents, take the payments, etc. After all that is done, our EDM department, Electronic Document Management, has to sort, barcode, and prep the documents for scanning, and then scan them into our electronic document repository. Then the last step is another clerk will go in to view the electronically scanned document, review it, and then do the data entry into ISIS, which is the Superior Court's case management system. That entire process can take anywhere usually from 2 to 3 business days. It takes usually up to 6 different clerks to process the documents, and the majority of that labor is actually spent moving documents around and physically managing them. By contrast, the e-filing process, the customer submits the documents via e-filing through the website, from home, from their office, what have you. That comes into a queue for an e-file review clerk to do all the steps at once. They check to make sure the forms are formatted properly. They process any fees that were submitted along with the documents, and then they file them in and do the data entry into the into the court's case management system, all in one step. Customer no longer needs to come down to the counter, so it's more convenient, and it allows for social distancing because you're no longer waiting in line with other members of the public in the lobby waiting to be served. And in most cases, the document can be processed by a single clerk in a single step, so it's much more efficient for both the customer and the clerk's office. So the systems for e-filing, the first one we would talk about is e-filing online, and that is a site run by the clerk of the Superior Court's office. So that is for us, and that handles family court, FC, criminal, CR, and some of the juvenile case types. That system does not have any functionality for processing payments at this time, but it also charges no additional fees on top of any filing fees that may be due. You can see the website below that is located at efiling.clerkofcourt.maricopa.gov, and customer service for any questions on those case types for e-filing would be through 37 Clerk, which is our phone number. That's 602-372-5375. The other set of systems are either AZ Turbo Core or eFile AZ, and those are the two systems run by vendors that are governed by the Administrative Office of the Courts here in the state of Arizona. And those are for processing the civil and the tax case types. They do have functionality for processing payments. So when you register for those sites, you would enter credit card information so that whenever you're processing a document that has a filing fee, it'll automatically charge you. There is an application fee, currently $6.50 per document, that is charged in addition to any filing fees that may be due. More information, training, and links to those specific systems can be found at azcourts.gov/e-filing information, and customer service for any issues with civil or tax case e-filing would be through 602-452-3519. So next, let's talk about mandatory and permissive. First of all, when we use those terms, what do we mean? When we say mandatory, we mean that attorneys who are members of the Arizona Bar are required to e-file. And since they are required to e-file, they cannot file on paper for things that they are under mandatory e-filing for. When we say permissive, we mean that anybody can e-file into a given case type, but they are not required to do so. Mandatory e-filing is governed by Arizona Supreme Court administrative orders. It's been a series of them going back several years, and the most recent one is AO 2020-134. That makes it mandatory for attorneys to e-file documents and case initiating documents into civil cases and all subsequent documents on tax cases. For family court, criminal, and those juvenile case types that we mentioned earlier go through the clerk's office e-filing website. Those are permissive, meaning that anybody can use e-filing for those case types, but they are not required to do so. And then lastly, TJ, transcript of judgment, ST, the small tax, lower court appeals, and probate mental health, and the water case, the stream adjudication cases have no e-filing options at this time. So exceptions to the mandatory e-filing in civil cases for attorneys would include any post-initiating documents requiring issuance by the clerk, as well as any accompanying documents requesting that issuance. The most common example that we have an issue on with those is writs of garnishment and the applications for writs of garnishment. Those cannot be e-filed. Those do need to be brought down to the filing counter. Documents, any portion of a document, and any exhibit filed under seal, those cannot be e-filed, need to be done at the counter. The next two kind of go together: waiver or deferral packets, or documents requiring a fee filed by a litigant for which a waiver or a deferral has already been granted. There is extra processing that needs to be done at the time of those applications, which is why they need to be done at the filing counter in person. Civil cases assigned to a probate division. So if you have a civil case that is related perhaps to an ongoing probate matter, and they are not consolidated, but they are both transferred to the same probate judicial officer for handling, since that probate judicial officer may not have full access to the e-filing system, e-filing cannot be used for those cases. And then lastly, attorneys from approved legal service organizations representing a litigant who is unable to pay an application fee for filing are able to file on paper rather than going through the e-filing systems. And the last main exception, we have recently added a case initiation for civil cases to be able to be e-filed. That went live just about a month and a half ago. There are some exceptions to that, though. Any case initiating documents and the case types listed on the screen right now, regular tax, forfeiture, election challenge, etc. These cannot be e-filed. Subsequent filings after the case has been established can be e-filed, but the new case initiation cannot. Payments. As I mentioned earlier, for civil and tax cases that go through the AOC systems, that's either AZ Turbo Court or eFile AZ, it will charge the card that you have on file through your registered account at the time that you submit the documents. The credit card takes the hit. The funds are held when the document is submitted, but the clerk of court does not receive those funds until and unless the document is actually accepted by the clerk and filed into the record. For that reason, if there's a refund on the filing fee, that is actually handled by AZ Turbo Court or eFile AZ. It is not something that is being refunded to you by the clerk of the court. The application fees are normally not refunded. They are charged whether or not the document is accepted or returned for deficiency. Again, that is nothing having to do with Clerk of Superior Court at all. That is an AOC issue, and you would contact for them with any concerns. If we receive a document and for some reason the fee was not paid at the time of filing, or if it's on a case type such as family court where we do not have the online payment available at this time, an email will be sent out to you letting you know the amount that's due, the filing ID for that submission, the type of fee due as well. You can make those payments by either coming into person or, which would be preferred right now, is to call 37 Clerk to make the payment over the phone using a credit card. Either way you do it, it's very important to have that information from the email handy so that the clerk that's assisting you can apply the payment correctly and efficiently to your submission. Future expansion. So as I mentioned, we just recently expanded civil e-filing through the AOC systems to include civil case initiation, which has been a big help, reducing people having to come down to the counter, reducing runner services having to come down with documents on a daily basis. So for social distancing, that's been a big deal. So we are trying to expand as rapidly as we can e-filing for both subsequent documents and case initiations into some other case types. So what we have going on right now, we are working on juvenile and subsequent e-filing for JD, JS, JA, and AC case types should be available by the end of this calendar year. And then we are hoping to have case initiation for those same case types available by the end of the first quarter of 2021. Once those are complete, we plan on doing both subsequent and case initiation e-filing for JG and JE case types in juvenile, and we look to have those done by the end of the second quarter of next year. We are currently working with AOC right now to expand family court and transfer it over to the AOC's systems. We are looking to have subsequent filing done at or shortly after the end of this calendar year. And we hope to have additional services and case initiation ready for family court e-filing by the end of first quarter next year. Lastly, that does leave a few other case types that people are interested in having e-filing in. Most notably, we get questions about probate, mental health, and lower court appeals. We are interested in offering those services, but where we go next is determined based on the needs of the community, the legal community, the wants and desires of the Superior Court, guidance from AOC as far as where they want us to go, and development resources available. We are constantly looking into these things as far as where expansion will go after what I already mentioned, and we hope to have more information available in the first quarter of next year. Any questions to reiterate what I mentioned earlier for customer service on civil and tax? If you're calling in just to make a payment, you will have the information in the email that you are sent, and that will refer you to 37 Clerk. Again, that's the clerk's office phone number of 602-372-5375. All other submission issues would go through AOC, so that would be 602-452-3519. And for family court and criminal case types, all questions can go to the clerk's office at 37 Clerk. One question that does come up is what happens when the system is down. So for family court and criminal, since it is permissive but not mandatory, you always have the option of filing in person. So if the system seems to be down, you can always bring your documents in to file on paper. However, for civil and tax, since those are mandatory e-filing, we would not be able to take those documents on paper unless we've received notification from Clerk's Office ITG or from the AOC that the systems are in fact down and that we are allowed to take filings over the counter. The reasons being is the Clerk's Office is bound by those AOC administrative orders that I had mentioned earlier in the presentation. We do not have the authority to override them and accept filings on paper for civil and tax unless the court, the AOC, or ITG tells us otherwise that we have to. Lastly, the e-filing guidelines that have some more specific information regarding e-filing with the Clerk of Superior Court can be found on our website. The link is listed below, as well as some information as far as how those guidelines are updated by agreement of the Clerk of Superior Court and the presiding judge of the Superior Court.
All right, thank you very much, Chris. With that said, that concludes our presentation today. I do just want to say a few things before we open it up for the Q&A. We are always looking for feedback on how we can improve our customer service or suggestions on how we can make our customers happier. So we are openly looking for feedback, and you can email that to us at the email listed here in the slide. It's help.us.serve@cosc.maricopa.gov. In addition to that, we always ask for the public to follow our social media channels. We have active accounts on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So with that said, I am going to hand the Q&A session over to Andrea Williams, who is going to see if there are some questions that you guys had.
Hello. First question, does each individual exhibit need a cover page?
I'll take that one. This is Leslie. Thank you. Because of the new system, we don't need a cover page on the exhibits anymore because they're submitted individually. So yeah, that is not necessary.
Thank you, Leslie. Does this document submittal process only apply to Maricopa County, or does it apply to all counties?
This is Chris. I will jump in on that one. It's not clear whether that is specifically about the exhibits or the e-filing, but either way, this presentation today is about Maricopa County Clerk of Superior Court. Processes for both e-filing and exhibit submission vary by county, so you'd want to check with the clerk's office or the Superior Court administration in whatever county you're interested in filing or submitting to.
And I do believe that concludes our questions and answer queue. Tiara?
Hi, Tiara. This is Lori. We actually had another few questions come in. Tiara, we have a question. Can you provide these slides and materials to attendees?
Hi, this is Tiara. Absolutely. What we had planned on doing was sending a recording of the webinar to all the registrants. So that would include everyone who was able to attend or who was not able to attend. But I will also append the PowerPoint presentation as a PDF for everyone to access as well.
Great. Thank you very much. I believe our next question is for Chris Driscoll. What types of situations would we use this Clerk of Court portal instead of another avenue like Turbo Court, for example?
Well, what that really comes down to is what case type you're filing into, because they are differentiated because of administrative orders requiring which one to be used. So Turbo Court and eFile AZ would be used for all civil e-filings and subsequent e-filings into tax cases. The clerk's office e-filing system is currently used for e-filing into family court, criminal, and those juvenile case types that have e-filing available.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. Our next question, I am going to shoot over to Anthony Mata. Can bulk exhibit submissions be sent via a zip file?
Actually, I was just typing an answer to that. Okay, so you really wouldn't have to, if you have 11 or more exhibits, you really wouldn't have to zip it up because the folder will take the individual files as they are. So you would basically just drag it. Once you get the email, the link to the secure folder, it's just a web browser. It'll open up and it's just a kind of a drag and drop interface. I suppose you could zip it up, but you would just be making more work for the courtroom services staff because they're going to have to unzip that file once they get it. You don't have to worry about compressing anything because there's not really, I don't want to say it's unlimited. Obviously, the infrastructure would determine the limitations of how much you can upload, but we've put a lot of files through the test, and I mean, I'm talking a couple hundred at a time, 100 megabytes. So you can definitely upload a lot of exhibits and a lot of documents into that secure folder. So I don't know that you would need to zip it. I mean, you can, I suppose, but it would just get unzipped anyways once it came over to our site. The form, I believe, will let you attach a zip file. Again, actually, no, I'm sorry. Excuse me. The secure folder only accepts certain file types: PDF, JPEG, bitmap, so on and so forth. Actually, I think it won't even let you pull a zip file into there. It would only let you pull a document file. So to answer that question, no, you can't.
Perfect. The next question about exhibits, Anthony, I'm going to keep you on here. Do you need to name your files Exhibit 1, Exhibit 2, etc., or can it be any name as long as it has a number in it?
Actually, the form says that you should name your file Exhibit 1, Exhibit 2, so on and so forth, but I'm going to defer to Leslie because it's really her staff that ultimately works with these files after they get into the system.
Yeah, I mean, that's helpful. Just so you know, though, it depends on, if we get plaintiff's exhibits and then defendant's exhibits, and if we have Exhibit 1 in both sets, we do have to change those. But it does help us if you number your exhibits, because then we know what order that you are expecting them to be marked in. So yes, I think it's a great idea. If you can name your exhibits, just Exhibit 1 plaintiff or something that simple would be great.
Thank you. I believe this is Chris, but anybody else can jump in. Is there going to be written instruction for case initiation procedures in Turbo Court available at some point?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So since Turbo Court and eFile AZ are both administered through vendors through AOC, the Administrative Office of the Courts, the AOC are the ones who are responsible for doing outreach, communication, and training on those systems. They are usually really good about being aggressive in training, reaching out to the bar, members of the public, and getting that done, although that has been impacted a little bit this year because of COVID. With all of that said, there are some training materials on the AOC's pages at azcourts.gov, which would be where you would want to go to look it up and then click on e-filing. There's different types of materials. There are links to some YouTube videos, etc. There's not a lot that is Maricopa County specific since we just launched civil case initiation in the past couple of months. But since the system is intended to be very similar across the counties, you can look at the videos that are there for PEMA, for example, and they're going to be very similar. They are close enough in walking you through it that if you view those videos and those tutorials, you would be able to go in and figure out e-filing into Maricopa County for civil case initiation. And again, if all of that fails, you would want to go ahead and contact AOC's customer service directly, 602-452-3519, and they could support you in that.
Okay, thank you. Leslie or Chris, how will notification be made when juvenile filing becomes available?
It is being communicated. We are still working on an exact launch date for when it is going to be available in some of the new case types. It is already available for delinquency. It's more that we are expanding subsequents for these other case types. We are in communication with agency stakeholders on that. And once we definitely have a launch date on the different phases going forward over the next few months, each of those will be communicated, probably mentioned on the clerk's office website, as well as on Twitter and Facebook. I would assume Tiara would be reaching out through those channels as she normally does.
Okay, and Chris, while I have you on there, don't go too far. Will Maricopa County Justice Courts be going to e-filing anytime soon?
The justice courts are not really under our purview. They do have some types of e-filings for documents that they automatically ingest, and they have had for a while, but that, my understanding is that that is not true across all the different justice courts, and it is limited in what they handled. So that's not really our call to make, so you'd want to contact AOC or the particular justice court for questions on that.
Okay, thank you. This next one is for Leslie. As a plaintiff, I submitted 56 exhibits through the portal. How do I get visibility into the defendant's exhibits?
Okay, I'm going to answer the procedural part of that, and then I'm going to let Anthony maybe mention the technical part. It's the responsibility of the opposing party to provide their copies of exhibits to you or to the other party. So Anthony, can you talk about the technical part of that? I don't think they're able to actually see the other party's exhibits in the portal. So go ahead and address that.
That's correct. So the portal only works one way. Basically, you can upload your exhibits and it comes to the clerk's office. We really don't have a mechanism to let you see other people's, other parties' documents. So yeah, you would only be able to push documents into the portal. You cannot pull them back out. I would imagine maybe public records requests. Is that, Leslie? I don't know if you get a lot of those, or I mean, obviously as part of the legal process. But yeah, we do not allow any public access as far as retrieval. You can push documents in, but you would not be able to pull them back out for yourself or for other parties.
Okay, thank you. Leslie, would you use this system to add additional exhibits after you've already put in initial exhibits?
Yes, you would just have to complete a new submission form and submit the supplemental exhibits separately. And Anthony, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. So the links, the form is a kind of a one-shot type thing. You once you hit submit, if you have 10 or less, that's kind of a done process. Your exhibits have been submitted. If you do a bulk upload, your link will stay open. Your secure folder link will stay open for 24 hours from the time it was created. So if you open one today, you would have until about 3 o'clock tomorrow to continue to upload, and it would continue to go into the portal. But after that link expires, you would be told, the link won't work. So as Leslie said, you would have to submit a new form.
Okay, and it looks like the last couple of questions are confirmations, and looking to Chris Driscoll. Can you file matters via e-file?
I'm sorry, you cut out and having trouble reading questions. Did you report that one? Repeat that, please.
Absolutely. Can you file probate matters via e-file?
Probate. No, not at this time. We do not have probate for e-filing. That is one of the things that we are looking into. Again, there's a lot of balancing between the resources we have, what case types AOC wants us to expand into, and what case types the court would like us to expand into. Hopefully, we'll have a clearer picture in around the first quarter of next year as far as where we are going to expand after family and juvenile.
Okay, and then Chris, same for you. Are waivers of service e-filed, or should they only be delivered via hard copy?
Waivers of service as well as affidavits of service can be e-filed, but since process servers are officers of the court, if they are the ones delivering it, but not actually attorneys, they can still file on paper as well. So that's something where it falls under permissive. You could do it either way.
Okay. Initial e-filings do not apply to forfeiture cases. Is this correct?
That is correct. Yes, that is
Okay.
correct. And let me clarify one last thing on that last question. So the waiver of service, if it's being, the question comes down to who it's being submitted by. So if you have an attorney who is submitting the waiver on behalf of a party, since it's an attorney filing it, if it's in a civil case, it would be mandatory e-file. If it's in a family case, it would be permissive.
Okay, and then I am actually going to ask Jessica Fotinos, our legal counsel and PIO, to jump back in here. She has some follow-up regarding the ability to view other parties' exhibits. Jessica, can I ask you to jump back in here?
Sure. Hi, everyone. A couple of things. So I wanted to jump in on that. Is generally, as Leslie indicated, the judicial officer in a case, you know, is the one that's making directions with regard to exhibits. And it's common that the judicial officer does order the parties to exchange exhibits upon submission. Generally in civil cases, it may occur at the same time where you do a disclosure of your list of witnesses and exhibits. It may happen at another time. But then that is something that's at the discretion of a judicial officer. So I think where Leslie and Anthony were is the portal is just for some upload and submit exhibits and not provide, like they said, view opportunities for other parties or members of the public or that sort of thing. And then if there's an issue with regard to the exchange of exhibits, like let's say a judicial officer ordered the parties to exchange exhibits, and for some reason that does not occur, that would be something that would need to be brought up with the judicial officer. And so the judicial officers, you know, we're sort of developed this portal really to be able to allow attorneys to submit exhibits that were normally being, you know, always delivered in person. So it was not a portal designed for attorneys to be able, or parties, to be able to see each other's exhibits. It was just a way within which to get the exhibits, you know, to the clerk's office for marking and then to the division. I did have one other thing I also wanted to add, which is a little off topic, but I did mention it, is again, the Maricopa County's Law Resource Library Center. That they do have their own website, and I can put that in the chat bar for everyone. But you can pretty much find it when you just Google or whatever browser you're using, Maricopa County Law Resource Library Center. And they actually have a link on there that is called Forms, and it provides a whole host of forms and instructions for the utilization of those forms in almost all case types. I would say, with the exception is there's not a lot of forms for criminal available on there, but civil, family, probate, and those forms have been approved by the Superior Court for use. And I highly recommend when people are using forms, especially when practicing in Maricopa County, that they utilize the forms that the Law Resource Library Center has, and not to necessarily utilize forms that perhaps the AOC or the Administrative Office of the Courts has. Because with each county, there are different local rules that each county adopts, and those can vary from county to county. So there are sometimes things where a form may be available on the AOC or the Administrative Office of the Court's website that is not compatible or in compliance with local county rules. That's not saying don't utilize the AOC as a resource, But if you're looking for forms, the best place to go is to the Law Library Resource Center. Check out all the forms that are there. And if a form may not be available there, then you can check out the AOC and see if there's something different there. And there's not forms to cover any and all type of submission, but I will tell you there's quite a bit of forms on there and some very good instructions. Also, the Law Resource Library Center, my understanding, still offering some informational sessions via a remote fashion. And a lot of those are really great for folks that are not going to have legal counsel and are going to handle a matter themselves. So really check out their website, because they do have different sessions on family law, on probate, on different things that are really great source of information. So that's enough. That's what I just wanted to chime in on. And so I'm finished there. If anyone has any other questions for me, but I'll defer back to Lori to see if any other questions came through on the chat for our presenters.
We do. Thank you so much, Jessica. Great information. The next question I'm going to throw over to either Leslie or Anthony. The question is, if you submit numbered exhibits, can they be offered and entered out of sequence?
I'll take that one. This is Leslie. So, the numbers are really just for tracking purposes, so that the judge and the clerk and the parties all can be on the same page as to what exhibit is being offered and entered into evidence. So absolutely, yeah, the numbering is just for tracking purposes. And there's oftentimes that, you have 10 exhibits and 5 and 6 will be the only ones that are offered and received in evidence, and we release the remaining exhibits. So yes.
Okay. And then Leslie, back to you again. Do exhibits appear on the ECR?
No, exhibits are used only in hearings and trials. So now let me just clarify though. Sometimes people do add exhibits to documents. That's different than what we're talking about here. We're talking about evidence for hearings and trials. So no, those do not go on the ECR. Once they're received and offered in evidence after hearing, they are then turned over to the exhibits department and they keep them. Most can be viewed through public access through the exhibits department, but no, they do not go on the ECR.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we had Anthony answer a portion of this next question, but Leslie, be prepared for the second part. Where do you submit audio and video files? And Anthony responded, the portal will not accept audio or visual or audio or video files. So Leslie, how would someone submit an audio or video exhibit file?
Yeah, so, and I'll explain again just quickly. The reason why we can't accept those is because the Court of Appeals cannot accept those from us. So that's kind of why we're limited on that at this time. So you can put them on a CD, DVD, a flash drive, and those will have to be delivered to the courthouse, either at the filing counter, exhibit intake area, or to the judicial division where your case is located.
Great. And then this next question, I think, is either for Jessica or Chris. Apologies, I know this is not about e-filing, but where can I talk to someone about probate forms and questions?
Probate forms, as Jessica mentioned, a good place to look is the Law Library Resource Center, and you can go to the Maricopa County Superior Court's website online, and they have some information on there with links and instructions to forms depending on what you're doing. The question as far as questions you may have, again, the clerk's office is kind of limited in what we could do as far as providing legal advice. You could try calling 37 Clerk, the clerk's office phone number at 602-372-5375. And the probate department may be able to assist you with specific questions, but again, we would not be able to give advice as far as, hey, this is what you should do in your situation. We could only answer concrete questions as far as how to do something if you already know what you're processing.
And this is Jessica. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. And this question might, just so folks will know, is, you know, the probate rules were recently, and I shouldn't say recently because time has really flown by, but the probate rules were amended, I believe, with an effective date of last January. So January 1, 2020. Whenever rules are amended, it does take a significant effort on the part of the Law Resource Library staff and team to get all new forms revised to comply with any rule changes. But I would suggest, if there are questions regarding forms that you believe may have incorrect information or you think could be improved, that those things be directed to the Law Resource Library Center. I know that the probate forms, there was a lot of significant changes made to those as a result of the rule changes. And for, you know, for example, right now, the Committee on Juvenile Rules at the AOC level is meeting. So you could see, you know, within the next year, generally rule petitions and those sorts of things don't happen overnight. There's quite a long process and a lot of thought behind it. But then once a rule packet or rules are amended or changed as approved by the Arizona Supreme Court, that's when the Law Resource Library Center spends an extraordinary amount of time updating forms and creating new forms where necessary. So I think on those issues, you know, your Law Resource Library Center is probably your best starting point for questions on forms.
Okay, thank you so much. And that is the last question that I have coming in through my chat area. I am going to turn it back over to Tiara.
Thank you so much, Lori. So that includes our Q&A session today. Again, I want to thank you all for joining us for our second part of the Clerk Services in the Age of COVID-19 webinar series. As I mentioned earlier, I am going to send a copy of the presentation as well as a link to the recording to all the registrants for today's presentation. So again, thank you so much for joining us and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.